The silence in the Seraphina cluster was not the tranquil quiet of deep space, but the taut, breathless pause before a scream. At its heart, the Aethelian Resonator, a crystalline lattice miles across, pulsed with a soft, internal light, a rhythm that had kept this sector of the galaxy harmonically stable for millennia. Then the shadows came. They were not ships in the conventional sense, more like holes punched in reality, absorbing light, their forms shifting and uncertain. The Nullsworn. With chilling precision, they converged on the Resonator. There was no grand explosion, no fiery defiance. Instead, the Resonator's light simply unraveled. Its intricate structure sagged, colors desaturated into a monochrome, ruin, and the very fabric of space around it puckered like scarred tissue. A wave of dissonant unreality pulsed outwards, and then the Seraphina cluster was fundamentally, disturbingly, quieter. News of the Seraphina Resonator's fall sent fresh waves of panic through the galactic confluence on Axion Prime. Inside, the confluence spire, a towering edifice of interwoven alien architectures, the assembly hall buzzed with discordant voices. Volg Admiral Vorkon, a creature of imposing crystalline facets that refracted light into intimidating glints, slammed a heavy appendage on his console. Another Resonator lost. This passive observation, this endless debate is galactic suicide. The Volg fleet stands ready. We must strike at the source of these Nullsworn, whatever the cost. His voice was like grinding stones. Opposite him, Quellian emissary Lyraean, whose sleek avian form seemed to flow rather than move, tilted her plumed head. Her voice, a series of melodic chirps and whistles, was deceptively gentle. And where is this source, Admiral? We understand nothing of the Nullsworn's origins, their motives, or even their true nature. Your strikes would be arrows loosed into a void. We need study, caution, understanding. The familiar stalemate settled, thick and choking. The Volg advocated for overwhelming force, the Quellians for measured analysis. Neither strategy had saved a single Resonator. Amidst the towering figures of the dominant species, human ambassador, Rylofen sat with a practiced air of calm she rarely felt. Humanity was a minor signatory to the Confluence Accords, their presence often a diplomatic courtesy rather than a position of influence. Their technology was generations behind the Volg's offensive capabilities, or the Quellians' sophisticated sensory networks. Today, however, the general anxiety was a leveler. Suddenly, a new signal cut through the babble. It was faint, ancient, and resonated with an almost heartbreaking purity. The sigil of the Aethel, unseen for centuries, bloomed on the main display. A hush fell. The Aethel, the architects of the Resonator network, the benevolent precursors, who had faded into myth, were speaking. The message was less a coherent statement and more a stream of abstract concepts and ethereal sounds. Words like Seed of Contingency, harmony and discord, and the echo of the unmade, intertwined with complex mathematical sequences and spatial anomalies that defied conventional astrogation. It concluded with a burst of coordinate data, so layered and seemingly paradoxical that most species translation software simply crashed or returned gibberish. Ambassador Fen felt a strange prickle on her skin, while the Volg and Quellian experts immediately began trying to brute force decipher the coordinates using conventional logic. Fen leaned towards her attaché. "Aris," she murmured, her voice low. "Get our linguistic and xenoanalysis team onto this. Focus on the poetics, the symbology, not just the numbers." Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose thoughtful eyes and slightly unkempt hair suggested a mind more at home in abstract theories than political chambers, nodded. "Understood, Ambassador. There's a waveform to the language. The coordinates might not be purely spatial." As the major powers wrestled with the Aethel's enigma, Admiral Vorkon dismissed it. "A dying whisper. Their network is failing, and so are they. The Volg will protect the known resonators. That is the only tangible course." Emissary Lyran, however, seemed troubled, her crest feathers ruffling. "A dying species' last hope should not be so easily discarded, Admiral." Aris Thorne returned to the small human legation, his mind already racing. The others saw chaotic data. He sensed an intricate tapestry. The Aethel hadn't just pointed to a location. They had hinted at a method of finding it, a way of thinking. He felt a nascent, almost heretical thought. What if the key wasn't about superior processing power, but a different kind of perception altogether? A perception, perhaps, that a young, often underestimated species might uniquely possess. The challenge was immense, the galactic stakes impossibly high. But for the first time in a long while, Thorn felt a spark of something other than dread. He felt a purpose. Days bled into a frantic week within the human legation on Axion Prime. Dr. Thorn, fueled by caffeine and an almost obsessive conviction, barely slept. He and his small team projected the Aethel transmission onto a vast, three-dimensional holographic display. The cryptic symbols and ethereal sounds swirling around them like a captured nebula. Initial attempts to apply standard decryption algorithms or direct astrogation solutions to the coordinates yielded nothing but frustration. His superiors, career diplomats more accustomed to trade negotiations than unraveling precursor puzzles, were beginning to show signs of impatience. Eris counseled a senior attaché, Borin Vrel, his tone gentle but firm. Perhaps the Aethel data is simply corrupted, or perhaps it's a philosophical testament, not a practical map. Thorn ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. No, Borin. There's structure here. Profound structure. It's just alien to our usual modes of thought. The Aethel speak of harmony and discord. What if the coordinates aren't a fixed point but a relationship, a resonance? He focused on the recurring linguistic motifs, concepts of interconnectedness, of empathy with the unmade, of finding pattern in what appeared to be chaos. These were ideas often dismissed as soft or unscientific by more pragmatically minded species like the Volg. But to Thorn, they hinted at something deeply human, the ability to understand systems not just through logic, but through intuition, through an understanding of emotional context and symbiotic relationships. He began to cross-reference the Aethel's mathematical sequences with patterns found in complex organic systems, in the emergent behavior of human social networks, even in the emotional cadences of ancient human poetry. It was a wild, unconventional approach. Then a breakthrough. One sequence, when interpreted not as a spatial vector, but as a descriptor of a complex emotional state, a specific blend of sorrow, hope, and focused creative intent, suddenly unlocked a cascade of decipherable data within another. It was like a combination lock where one tumbler wasn't a number but a feeling. That's it, Thorn exclaimed, startling his team. The Aethel foresaw a species capable of this emotional calculus. The coordinates aren't just where, but how you look for it, what you must feel to perceive it. The deciphered location was startling. A turbulent, uncharted region near a collapsing nebula known on Old Speculative Human. Star charts as the Shroud of Whispers. It was considered void space, too unstable for safe travel. As Thorn and Ambassador Fenn prepared their report, grim news arrived. The resonator in the Krelnar expanse had gone dark. The Nullsworn were accelerating their campaign. Panic rippled anew through the confluence. Volg and Quellian fleets, already stretched thin, were redeployed to guard other major resonators, their movements predictable, their strategies reactive. Ambassador Ryla Fenn, armed with Thorn's startling but compelling interpretation, faced the Confluence Council. The Aethel message is not corrupted, she stated, her voice clear and steady despite the skepticism radiating from the assembly. It leads to a specific region, the Shroud of Whispers. We believe it requires a unique approach, one that my science officer Dr. Thorn has uncovered, Admiral Vorkon scoffed, his crystalline structure vibrating with disapproval. Emotional calculus, whispers in a void. Ambassador, with all due respect to your imaginative people, this is a time for proven tactics, not philosophical expeditions. Emissary Lyraean, however, tilted her head, her bright eyes fixed on Fenn. The Aethel were not a conventional species, Admiral. Perhaps their solution is not conventional either. The major fleets are committed. What harm in allowing a small, fast human vessel to investigate this? Anomaly? If they find nothing, little is lost. If they find something, Fen seized the opening. Exactly. We request clearance for a single exploratory vessel, the Stardust Drifter. She's a science and survey ship, small but highly adaptable. After a tense debate, fueled more by the major powers' preoccupation with their failing strategies than any real faith in the human proposal, the confluence grudgingly acquiesced. A low-priority, independent exploratory mandate was granted. Aboard, the Stardust Drifter docked at a small human orbital station. Captain Eva Rostova received the orders. She was a woman of quiet intensity, her dark hair pulled back severely, her gaze direct and assessing. She listened to Ambassador Fenn's briefing, then to Dr. Thorne's more elaborate explanation of his theory, her expression unreadable. Her, Chief Engineer Rena Kai, a whirlwind of energetic enthusiasm with grease smudges on her cheek, practically vibrated. The Shroud of Whispers and Aethel Tech? Eva, we have to go. Rostova finally smiled, a rare but impactful sight. Plot a course, Ms. Kai. Dr. Thorne, welcome aboard. Let's see if these human whispers have something to say. The Stardust Drifter, a vessel barely registering on the galactic power scale, slipped from its mooring and turned its nose towards the unknown, carrying the slimmest of hopes for a galaxy teetering on the brink. The Shroud of Whispers lived up to its ominous name. As the Stardust Drifter crossed the threshold into the uncharted nebula, the smooth fabric of space-time seemed to fray. Instruments flickered, sensor ghosts danced on the viewscreen, and a low, almost subliminal hum resonated through the ship's hull, making the crew's teeth ache. Starlight here was distorted, bent into grotesque auroras by gravitational eddies and pockets of exotic matter. Report, Gian. Captain Rostova's voice was a calm anchor in the unsettling environment. Tactical Officer Gian Rex, a man built like a bulkhead with a surprisingly gentle touch on his console, frowned. External sensors are unreliable, Captain. We're getting echoes of energy signatures that vanish before we can lock on. Reality fluctuations are increasing. I'd advise extreme caution. Noted, Rostova replied, her gaze fixed on the swirling chaos outside. Rena, how are our shields and structural integrity fields holding? From the engine room, Rena Kai's voice crackled with a mix of strain and excitement. Compensating, Captain. I'm rerouting power through the secondary conduits and creating micro-adjustments to the field harmonics. It's like trying to tune a violin in an earthquake. But she's holding. Dr. Eris Thorne, strapped into an observation chair, was less focused on the immediate dangers and more on the subtle patterns within the chaos. The Aethel data spoke of finding sanctuary in the storm's eye, he murmured, more to himself than anyone. This instability, it feels less like random decay and more like a perimeter, a defense perhaps, or a filter. Days turned into a disorienting blend of careful navigation and sudden emergencies. Once a wave of spatial distortion nearly tore the port nacelle from its mooring, saved only by Rena Kai's inspired if highly unorthodox power surge that momentarily created a counterwave. Another time, they were pursued by what Gian Rex could only describe as energy wraiths, ephemeral entities that flickered in and out of existence, their passing disrupting ship systems until Rostova expertly maneuvered the Stardust Drifter through a dense asteroid field, losing them in the gravitational chaos. Through it all, Rostova maintained a steady hand, her commands precise, her demeanor unflappable. She trusted her crew implicitly, and they in turn drew strength from her composure. Thorne, using his understanding of the Aethel's emotional calculus, began to detect a faint, coherent signal buried deep within the Shroud's dissonant symphony, a thread of order in the madness. There, he said suddenly, pointing to a seemingly unremarkable sector on the navigational display, a swirling vortex of cosmic dust and faint radiation. The signal is strongest there, but it's shielded, cloaked by the nebula's interference. Take us in, Mr. Thorne, providing the vector. Rostova ordered her pilot, a young officer named Lyra Chen. Gian, full sensor sweep. Focus on penetrating scans. Rena, be ready for anything. As they ventured deeper into the vortex, the ambient distortions paradoxically began to lessen in some respects, while in others they intensified in highly specific ways, as if the Stardust Drifter was passing through layers of a complex invisible mechanism. Then the ship's long-range sensors chimed. "Contact," Gian Rex announced, his voice tight. "Artificial structure, Captain. Massive. Aethel energy signature confirmed, but it's different. Smaller, more focused than a main resonator. And it's active." Through a thinning veil of iridescent gas, they saw it. A delicate, almost organic-looking structure of crystalline tendrils and glowing filaments, nestled within a pocket of surprisingly stable space. It was far smaller than the galaxy-spanning resonators, yet it pulsed with a quiet, potent energy. Unlike the others, this one was seemingly untouched by any Nullsworn influence. It felt less like a broadcast station and more like a receiver, or perhaps a tuning fork waiting for a specific vibration. "It's an outpost," Thorn breathed, his eyes wide with awe. "Or a specialized node." The Aethel knew this place would be hidden, protected by the Shroud. And they left this instrument active, waiting. "Waiting for whom, Dr. Thorn?" Rostova asked, her gaze fixed on the alien marvel. Thorn looked at her, a profound realization dawning. "Perhaps, Captain," he said slowly, "waiting for a species that could find harmony in discord. Waiting for us." The Stardust Drifter, a tiny speck of human endeavor, hung before the ancient Aethel construct, a silent testament to a desperate galaxy-old gamble. The courage and adaptability of its crew had brought them here, to a place no other galactic power had dared or deigned to seek. The question now was, what did the Aethel expect them to do with what they had found? The Aethel installation was breathtaking. As the Stardust Drifter cautiously approached, its delicate crystalline arms seemed to reach out, not in aggression, but as if offering an interface. There were no visible entry points, no docking bays. "It's not designed for physical interaction in the way we understand it," Eris Thorn observed, his gaze sweeping over the intricate structure. "It feels more like a sensory organ, or a musical instrument designed to be played by consciousness itself." Captain Rostova kept the Stardust Drifter at a respectful distance. "Dr. Thorn, any ideas on how to proceed?" "The Aethel message emphasized resonance, Captain," Thorn replied, his mind racing. "If we can project a sympathetic frequency, perhaps based on the emotional key we used to find this place." Rena Kai, ever practical, chimed in from engineering. "My long-range comms array can be modified to emit complex energy patterns, Dr. Thorn. If you can give me the parameters, I can try to sing its song, so to speak." Working in tandem, Thorn provided the conceptual framework, a blend of curiosity, peaceful intent, and the specific Aethelian harmony he'd deciphered, while Kai translated it into complex wave functions. Slowly, carefully, the Stardust Drifter began to emit a subtle, intricate pulse of energy towards the alien construct. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one of the crystalline tendrils of the Aethel installation glowed brighter, and a beam of soft, opalescent light lanced out, enveloping the human ship. It wasn't an attack. It felt like an invitation, a data stream that bypassed conventional sensors and spoke directly to their minds. Vivid, overwhelming images and concepts flooded their awareness. They saw the Aethel, beings of pure thought and benevolent energy, tending to the nascent galaxies. They witnessed the slow, creeping emergence of the Nullsworn, not from a point in their universe, but as an intrusion from a dimension with fundamentally different physical laws, a place where the structured reality of this cosmos was an intolerable abrasion. The Nullsworn were not evil in a moral sense. They were more like a cosmic immune response from another plane, drawn to the irritant of ordered existence, their presence inherently causing entropy and dissolution. They didn't communicate or conquer. They simply unmade. The Aethel, logs conveyed through this direct psionic interface, revealed their dawning horror as their resonator network, designed to foster cosmic harmony, became a beacon for this entropic force. "They're allergic to certain kinds of complexity," Thorn managed, his voice strained as he processed the influx. Specifically, the kind of self-aware, creative, and emotionally resonant consciousness that blossoms in species like ours. The Aethel, in their fading wisdom, had realized they couldn't fight the Nullsworn with force. That would be like trying to punch a hole in water. Instead, they had conceived of a desperate long-shot strategy to cultivate or find a species whose very nature, whose mental and emotional output could create a counter-resonance, a field of such intricate, vibrant, and self-aware order that it would be anathema to the Nullsworn's unmaking influence repelling them, making structured reality unpalatable. This installation, this resonance node, was a key part of that strategy. It wasn't a weapon, but an amplifier, a tuner, designed to harness and focus the unique conscious spectrum of a Seed of Contingency. The species they had gambled would one day find it. Humanity. They didn't leave us a weapon, Rostova said, a sense of awe in her voice. They left us a mirror and a means to project ourselves. As this profound understanding settled upon the crew, Rex's voice cut through the reverie, sharp and urgent. Captain, unidentified contacts, multiple bogies, signature matches the Nullsworn profile from the Seraphina cluster attack. They're emerging from the nebula's edge, closing fast. On the main viewer, the familiar, terrifying sight of reality warping, Nullsworn vessels, larger than simple scouts this time, resolved from the swirling gases. They were drawn by the Stardust Drifter's interaction with the Aethel node, like predators scenting prey. The philosophical implications of the Aethel's legacy slammed into the harsh reality of imminent danger. The crew of the Stardust Drifter now understood their purpose, the unique strength humanity possessed in this existential conflict. But understanding was one thing. Survival, and enacting that defense, was another entirely. The Nullsworn were here. The approach of the Nullsworn vessels was heralded by a sickening lurch in reality. The lights on the Stardust Drifter's bridge flickered violently, and a low grinding sound, like the universe itself tearing, filled the air. Outside, the space, around the approaching Nullsworn ships warped and shimmered, making them difficult to target. There were 3 of them, significantly larger than the scout patterns reported from previous distant encounters. Shields are fluctuating wildly. "Captain!" Rex called out, his knuckles white on his console. "Standard energy dispersal patterns are ineffective. It's like they're not even hitting a solid surface." "Evasive maneuvers, Lyra," Rostova commanded, her voice tight but controlled. "Jian, try cycling through different shield frequencies. Rena, give me everything you've got on engines and prepare for potential system overloads." The Stardust Drifter danced through the distorted space, its thrusters firing desperately. But the Nullsworn ships, moving with an unnatural flowing grace, effortlessly matched their maneuvers, hemming them in against the Aethel resonance node. A lance of what looked like concentrated void struck near the human ship's stern, and, despite the shields, a section of the hull simply ceased to be. The atoms unmaking themselves into nothingness. Warning klaxons blared. "Hull breach sector Gamma 7. Rena Kai yelled from engineering, her voice strained. "Containment fields are holding, but barely. We can't take many hits like that." Eris Thorn, pale but resolute, grabbed Rostova's arm. "Captain, conventional tactics won't work. The Aethel data was clear. We can't fight them. We have to repel them. We have to use the node." Rostova looked from Thorn's intense gaze to the terrifying grace of the Nullsworn ships, then back to the silent, waiting Aethel construct. Her pragmatism warred with the sheer outlandishness of the idea, but conventional options were evaporating with every passing second. "Explain." "Doctor, quickly." "The node is an amplifier," Thorn said, speaking rapidly. "It's designed to take the conscious and emotional output of a resonant species and project it as a coherent field. A field that, according to the Aethel, is intolerable to the Nullsworn. We need to connect the Stardust Drifter's systems to it, use our power core, to boost its broadcast, and then we, the crew, become the signal." "Become the signal?" Rex muttered, looking from Thorn to the captain. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Thorn met his gaze, We focus our collective will, our creativity, our strongest positive emotions, hope, determination, courage, even our appreciation for beauty, for connection. We project it intentionally. The Aethel believe this complex, ordered living energy is the antithesis of the Nullsworn's entropic nature. Rostova made her decision. The alternative was swift, certain annihilation. Rena, can you interface our power core and emitters with that node? Safely? Kai's voice, usually buzzing with enthusiasm, was tight with the sheer audacity of the request. Captain, that's Aethel technology, thousands, maybe millions of years old. Interfacing with our systems. It's like trying to hotwire a god. But I can try. I'll need to bypass safeties, reroute primary power. It'll be risky. Do it, Rena, now. Rostova turned to the bridge crew. You heard Dr. Thorne. This isn't about firing weapons. This is about who we are. Lyra, Gian, bridge team, focus. Think of what you value, what you fight to protect. Not with anger, but with clarity, with intent. Her gaze softened fractionally. We are humanity. Let's show them what that means. As Kai worked frantically in engineering, coaxing ancient alien technology and stressed human systems into an improbable handshake, Gene Rex's team readied what few internal defenses they had just in case. The Nullsworn were closing, their entropic aura causing instruments to fail and the very air to feel thin and cold. Interface almost complete, Captain, Kai shouted over the comm, the sounds of arcing energy and straining generators underscoring her words. The node is drawing power, a lot of it. Systems are redlining, but it's taking it. Dr. Thorne, Rostova said, her voice a beacon of calm in the rising chaos. It's your show. Thorne nodded, taking a deep breath. He closed his eyes, not in prayer but in deep concentration. He thought of Earth, of music, of the laughter of children, of the intricate beauty of a mathematical equation, of the courage of his crewmates. He reached out with his mind, guided by the Aethel's resonant pathways, and began to sing his part of their collective song. One by one, the bridge crew, then officers throughout the ship, followed his lead, their expressions shifting from fear to intense focus. It was an act of profound, desperate faith in themselves, in an ancient alien plan, and in the very essence of what it meant to be human. The Stardust Drifter began to glow, not with weaponized energy, but with a soft internal luminescence, channeling its power and its crew's spirit into the heart of the Aethel Resonance Node. The Aethel Resonance Node, fed by the Stardust Drifter's straining power core and the focused consciousness of its human crew, began to thrum with an almost unimaginable energy. It wasn't the raw, destructive force of a weapon, but something far more complex, like the burgeoning crescendo of a symphony played on instruments carved from light and emotion. Crystalline tendrils pulsed, shifting through a spectrum of colors that defied earthly description, and a wave of pure, structured resonance bloomed outwards. It was a wave of concentrated being, the distilled essence of human hope, ingenuity, courage, and the stubborn refusal to quietly go extinct. It carried the intricate patterns of their thoughts, the depth of their shared emotions, the fierce, beautiful complexity of self-aware life. The leading Nullsworn vessel, which had been gracefully, menacingly gliding towards the Stardust Drifter, shuddered violently as the resonance wave washed over it. Its shadowy form, normally impervious to physical force, seemed to lose cohesion. The edges of its entropic field flickered and recoiled, as if burned by an invisible fire. There was no explosion, no debris, but the Nullsworn ship abruptly veered off course, its movement suddenly erratic, clumsy. It was not acting with tactical intelligence, but with what could only be described as profound discomfort, even panic. The other two Nullsworn ships, moments from engaging, also faltered. The resonance wave, propagating outwards from the Aethel node, created a rapidly expanding sphere of, for want of a better word, sanity, a bastion of ordered reality that was utterly anathema to their nature. They too began to retreat, their forms wavering, their reality-distorting aura visibly shrinking. They didn't fire back. They simply fled, phasing back into the turbulent depths of the Shroud of Whispers, vanishing as if they were nightmares, dispelled by dawn. Aboard the Stardust Drifter, the crew sagged in their stations, the immense mental and emotional effort leaving them drained but exhilarated. The ship's systems whined in protest, power levels critical, but they had held. The bridge was silent for a moment, save for the ragged breathing of its occupants. "Status?" Captain Rostova finally managed, her voice hoarse. Rex stared, at his console, then at the empty void where the Nullsworn had been. "They're gone, Captain. All contacts have withdrawn from the immediate vicinity. The local reality distortions are stabilizing." He looked up, a bewildered awe on his face. It worked. It actually worked. Renakai's voice came over the comm, weak but triumphant. "Power core is stable, Captain, but the main conduits to the node interface are fused. The Aethel device itself, it's gone dormant. I think we gave it everything we, and it, had." Eris Thorne slowly opened his eyes, a profound exhaustion mixed with an almost spiritual understanding etching his features. The Aethel were right. It wasn't about destruction. It was about incompatibility. We made this small corner of space intolerable to them. The resonance cascade had not just repelled the immediate threat. For a brief, luminous moment, the chaotic energies of the Shroud of Whispers itself had seemed to calm. The dissonant hum momentarily replaced by a clearer, more harmonious tone before settling back, though subtly less menacing than before. Rostova took a deep, steadying breath. The Stardust Drifter was battered, its crew exhausted, the Aethel node likely spent for now. But they had survived. More than that, they had proven something of galactic importance. "Mr. Rex," she ordered, her voice regaining its strength. "Prepare a full report for Ambassador Fenn. All sensor logs, Dr. Thorne's theoretical framework, and a complete record of what just happened. I have a feeling the Confluence is going to find this rather hard to believe." As the Stardust Drifter, scarred but victorious, slowly began to extract itself from the now quieter Shroud of Whispers, a tiny pulse of data, carrying an unbelievable tale of human courage and an utterly unconventional victory, began its long journey towards Aethelian Prime. The galaxy's perception of the chaotic, emotional, and often underestimated species known as humanity was about to undergo a seismic shift. They had faced the unmaking and answered with the vibrant, defiant song of their existence. The return of the Stardust Drifter to the periphery of confluence space was met with a mixture of bafflement and cautious anticipation. Its initial report, transmitted ahead, had been succinct. Aethel node located in Shroud of Whispers, Nullsworn contact, threat neutralized by unconventional means based on Aethel principles. Full data package follows. The phrase unconventional means had sent ripples of speculation through the bureaucratic halls of Aethelian Prime. When the full data package arrived, sensor logs showing the Nullsworn recoiling, Dr. Thorne's detailed hypotheses on conscious resonance, and Captain Rostova's stark, factual after-action report, the initial reaction was disbelief, bordering on ridicule in some quarters. Volg Admiral Vorkan was publicly dismissive. Emotional fields? Conscious. Projection. This is not warfare. It is poetry. The humans were lucky. Perhaps the Nullsworn scouts were a lesser variant. But the Quellian emissary Lyraean, along with a growing number of more open-minded analysts from other species, studied the data with intense focus. The telemetry was undeniable. The Nullsworn had not been destroyed by firepower, but had actively fled from the area of the Aethel node during the resonance event. Furthermore, subtle but persistent shifts in the energy, patterns of the Shroud of Whispers, detected by long-range confluence sensors, correlated perfectly with the Stardust Drifter's timeline. Something extraordinary had happened. Ambassador Ryla Fenn arranged for an immediate special session of the Confluence Council. This time, when she stood to speak, flanked by a weary but resolute Captain Eva Rostova and a quietly confident Dr. Thorn, the chamber was not filled with dismissive murmurs, but with a tense, expectant silence. Members of the confluence, Fen began, her voice echoing in the vast hall. The crew of the Stardust Drifter have not just returned with data, they have returned with a potential solution. A testament to the Aethel's profound foresight, and to a strength we, as a galactic community, have largely overlooked. Captain Rostova gave a concise professional account of the mission, her words painting a vivid picture of the dangers faced and the desperate gambit undertaken. Then Dr. Thorne stepped forward. He did not speak of tactics or ship capabilities, but of the Aethel's philosophy, the nature of the Nullsworn as beings from a different dimensional reality, and the unique properties of complex, self-aware consciousness as a deterrent. The Nullsworn are not an invading army in the traditional sense, Thorne explained, his gaze sweeping across the diverse alien faces. They are drawn to structured reality, which to their perception is a dissonance. The Aethel understood that the most potent defense was not a weapon that mirrors their destructive capabilities, but a resonance that affirms our own mode of existence so profoundly, so intricately, that it becomes anathema to theirs. Humanity, with its complex emotional spectrum, its capacity for abstract creativity, its inherent drive for connection and meaning, appears to be highly effective at generating this counter-frequency. Admiral Vorkon grumbled, "So we are to feel the enemy into submission? This is absurd." But Emissary Lyran spoke, her melodic voice surprisingly firm. "Is it any more absurd, Admiral, than continuing to use tactics that have consistently failed, losing us resonator after resonator? The humans offer evidence of success, however unorthodox. The Aethel were not fools. They chose their Seed of Contingency for a reason." The debate was fierce, but the undeniable data from the Stardust Drifter, coupled with the sheer desperation of their situation, began to sway even the most skeptical. The fact that a small, underestimated human crew had achieved what the combined might of the major powers could not was a stark, unavoidable truth. Ultimately, the confluence, in a historic decision, voted to tentatively fund a new initiative, the Aethel Protocol. It was a multi-species project, with humans playing a central role, dedicated to understanding, replicating, and deploying the principles of conscious resonance. The plan involved constructing more resonance amplifiers based on the Aethel, nodes design and training diverse teams, not just of humans but of any species demonstrating the capacity for the required empathetic and creative projection to protect the remaining Aethelian Resonators. It signaled the beginning of a new kind of defense, a shift from purely technological warfare to one that integrated the deepest aspects of consciousness and being. Humanity's role in the galaxy was irrevocably transformed. No longer just a minor player, they were now seen as holders of a unique and vital key to survival. Ambassador Fen, Captain Rostova, Dr. Thorne, and the entire crew of the Stardust Drifter became pioneers, their names synonymous with this paradigm shift. As the Stardust Drifter underwent repairs and upgrades, its crew knew their initial journey was but the first step in a long, different kind of war. The threat of the Nullsworn remained, vast and existential. But now, there was more than just fading light. There was a new dawn, kindled by the courage, ingenuity, and the indomitable, multifaceted spirit of humanity. They had been underestimated, almost overlooked, but in the galaxy's darkest hour, they had proven to be its last and perhaps brightest hope. The universe was listening, and humanity, finally, had found its voice.